Shabbat Shalom. How wonderful the good company of Shekinah Mashiach in her fullness, powers of heaven, and the spirits of Tzaddikim and anointed people, and. Great luminous assembly. And a day of deep remembrance. In the midst of whatever is transpiring, always there is this rest. Resting in the Lord. Resting in our intrinsic nature. Awakened mind. Hallelujah. Let's take the moment to be inward. In deep remembrance of the supernal Son of the Supreme, shining within and behind our heart, in the heart of our holy soul. This secret center, and that very radiance shining all around us, in all directions. Holding this space of unity and fullness. Inseparable from the infinity of light. Vast luminous emptiness, aware, awake. So in oneness, let us invoke and pray. Allahu ayya, 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 oh, the day, oh, the day, oh, the day, all ingathered, all unified, all uplifted in resurrection, in ascension, this enlightenment liberation. This is our heart wish and this is our prayer. O Holy One, light of true cross shining into all directions of endless space. Holy Spirit, moving, wearing light, fire, true kingdom of heaven, this anointing. And so we pray for many people, many living beings. Be anointed this day And so ingathered, praying for movements of deliverance, of healing, of awakening. And so remembering primordial truth, supernal truth of innate unity, non-duality. All in you, Atah, Holy Eternal One. All in you, Atah, Mashiach. Behaya. Amen. Last week we were talking about us and our lives, us as we are and our lives as they are, as path, and as having present everything needed for our spiritual realization, supernal realization. Our experience of this enlightenment. And it is so true. And I want to expand upon that, carry that forward a bit further. There is a teaching in Kabbalah of everything happening with whole human being. And you know, on one level, it's talking about the masculine, feminine joined as one. You could call that unification of enlightened activities and wisdom. The spaciousness, the emptiness, with and through which the whole radiant, magical radiant display appears, everything manifests. But a whole human being, that means the entirety of you, the entirety of me, the whole of us. And this includes all aspects. So, of course, it includes, all of our virtuous aspects and all of our strengths and those qualities that, yes, naturally we prefer to put forward and, keep. But it also includes those we might consider non-virtuous, not so lovely, not so pleasant, not so desirable. And those qualities we would, kind of like to just go away. Except it doesn't work that way, as we find out in our journey and our deepening self-knowledge, knowledge of how mind works. Doesn't quite work that way. And it's very much like the story in Exodus, where, of course, the Israelites come out of Egypt, and as the story goes, there's this whole mass mixed multitude that comes with them. And boy, doesn't that mixed multitude become a problem. Again and again and again. And as it turns out, for whatever reason, they just can't get rid of them. There's the children of Israel with this vast mixed multitude, all mixed in there. What a story of us, huh? with us, the spiritual person, the good person, with this mixed multitude of all these other things, and they to go away. That's just not us as we are. It's not how we are, with body, with mind, and so on. No, actually, the entirety is the vehicle. And actually, we begin to find that within those things that seem not so good, like afflictive emotion, so on, that when we're actually able to look into it just as it is, and its rawness, its nakedness, free from the judgment, the concepts, the stories, the justification, all that, just being present with, and that energy, and it's a lot of energy. It's like, yeah, early on we come to realize we have a whirlwind of a neurotic mind. There's a lot of energy in the whirlwind. Hey, there's even a story of someone, getting taken up in divine rapture in a whirlwind. Might be something to that on an inner level. Maybe. It's also true, as anyone who has been a meditator and a practitioner, and for many years and for a long time can speak and walked a good ways on the journey of how we definitely, as we mature in our capacity of the calm abiding and in silent witnessing and generating increasing awareness and mindfulness, which helps preserve awareness, and we develop more and more a capacity of focused attention, concentration, without distraction, to really look into things and be present and see and feel and know. That, yeah, more and more there's some peace, some rest in our lives. There's more and more happiness, satisfaction. It's true. And when we come to some interesting spaces that, well, they do feel quite good. Like, wow, spiritual realization is actually taking hold and deepening. We also know that in a while, the storm will come. All of a sudden, things will be happening. There'll be stirring of, afflictive emotions, fear, vulnerability, anxiety, jealousy, anger, or even a popping up right in the middle of that. Oh, I'm becoming realized. I'm very close to full realization. Whoa, pride, arrogance. Anyhow, but this is all part of it. It's the whole thought that, thoughts and emotions like somehow, someday, just just go away, and that's untrue. Mind is mind, and just as it is, and all of its different dimensions or layers of consciousness, and it's fine. And yet ultimately it's how we are with and relating with. About view, about attitude as things are stirring, and our willingness to be present fully in what's arising and what's happening, and working with it. And it's very interesting. When we talk about transformation, it's not like you're going to change one thing to another thing. That's not really what's being said. Rather, what's being said is that as we have more penetrating insight, discerning awareness, we begin to find the energetic nature of everything, but more so, the wakefulness that's in it, the wisdom that's in it. And of course, that transforms it. That transforms our experience of it. It's quite interesting. Just like releasing, it's not like a going away thing. It's just like, yeah, and sometimes it was such penetrating insight, there's just, it disappears. Because it never was what it seemed. So what it seemed disappears, and all of a sudden there's this energy and openness and freedom. Very powerful. And totally able to be further directed to this unfolding self-realization and awakening. Yeah. But along with this, not simply outside things, we also want to suspend these judgments of easy time, auspicious time, practice realization, difficult time, challenging time, inauspicious for facilitating realization. That's not true. Just like thoughts that, well, when one gets realized, everything just falls into place roundabout in life, and oh, there they are. That's not reality as it is. States, conditions are always changing. And here a word journey. When one's on a journey, one keeps going through all these different living environments, all these different conditions, encountering all these different situations, and it's about the journey. And of course, we're talking about a journey in which there's no point of arrival. Everything's about the journey itself. No goal but the journey, no goal but the path. So in terms of not only ourselves and whole self, but our lives and whole life, including whatever challenges, difficulties, so on arise, whether in body or mind or outwardly in things happening. It's like we have a wonderful experience. You live long enough here, you get to watch some changing times. The longer you live, the more one gets to see the wow. And of course, kind of, sort of recently, we all, wherever we live in the world, got to see a whoa. This is different. Whoa. Things have changed. Scary. Okay. We can be with the scary. But, yeah. So what an opportunity. Like to be a middle pillar, middle way, right? And not take sides and not go to extremes and not, and to actually exercise and how much more awareness of, wow, life is short. And there's no time to waste here. Mm-hmm. Good, bad? Don't know. There's just what's happening. And things that can be changed, things that cannot. Change what can, what cannot. Learn how to embrace throughout the wakefulness, the wisdom, the energy, the blessing, to uplift, to move with in a beneficial way, in a way of wisdom and compassion, with self, with others. It's okay. It's also interesting that in various wisdom traditions, where there's, self-realization teaching, enlightenment teaching, it's interesting how often in those teachings, in various places with various individuals, enlightened, unrealized individuals, so on, talking about wanting to live in the degenerate times, wanting to be present in the challenging times. On one hand, that's that whole deep love, passionate compassion quality on one level. But there's also a deep understanding in the realization that, and there is so much energy for a swifter realization present that's moving. And any time you see a swift shifting and so on, it's not just one side or the other. It's this whole field of energy and intelligence and so actually wishing to, or at times promising to, be present with beings in such time. So rather than avoiding or, sure glad I'm enlightened now, won't have to be there then. It's like, woo, ready, embrace, arise in, inseparable from, in the play of interbeing. It's all good. And why I'm calling this out is just, being real. And pointing out, if you read the stories of various realized individuals in various wisdom traditions, and they're coming into being, okay, kind of once in a while you stumble across one that seems like, oh, wow, they had it easy. Sort of. But that's not usually the case. Quite a variety of lives with quite a variety of things happening roundabout and different difficulties, different challenges, as well as easier times, and just how it really is as a human being walking in world, life. Yeah. But then nevertheless, even some of the fiercest, like, whoa, came into being through that. Stories. That little proof text, that little word to us of, oh no, your life too, you and your life. Oh yes. If this, then that. If not this, then not that. Except, oh yes, this and that. That you're my life and us. It's actually an important remembrance for us. And yeah, even more important is when we get older and experience a older body and, aging, illness, oh no, not a problem. What a vehicle. The whole movement's designed as a beautiful vehicle when taken up with this intention. And it's good. And besides, we all know the minute we work out whatever issues or whatever troubles are going on and there's a little slice of, oh, cool, and breathe for a while. It's tick-tock, tick-tock, till the next thing needs to be fixed or dealt with, or that's just kind of part of the truth of impermanence, right? It just works that way. And no, I'm not speaking away, meaning, doomful or to depress anybody. I'm far from it. I'm saying, it's kind of like a surfing thing. And riding whatever tides up and whatever surf is up and taking up that energy and moving with and journeying in the travels. And enjoying and having some fun. We only live this life once. And every day only happens one time. Every moment, actually. It never was before, never will be after. It's quite exciting when you think about it. Amazing, too. Quite wonderful. Oh, always fresh, new, never the same. True. Very. I think enough words for me. Time for you. Your wisdom. May the radiance of your awakened mind and intuitive intelligence strengthen, 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 shine brighter, brighter, and brighter. May you indeed remember being light of world. May you indeed remember blessing upon all that transpires. And so may it be, Holy Eternal One. Increase and preserve your secret, your realization. My love to you. Shalom.
As the whole human, everything, all of it, the entire experience included. What are you hearing? How do these words stir you?
Sarah. I really just loved the analogy of surfing, because in surfing, you're not always riding that wave. Sometimes that wave is crashing down on you, and it reminded me, I had an experience yesterday out on our side by side going through the mountains, but it was so hot. And the heat from the side by side was just stifling. And I was just almost falling asleep and just thinking to myself, oh, I just want to be home. I just want to be home. So it was an 8-hour ride. so so I was kind of wrestling with myself, going, should I complain? Should I just say, let's just turn around and go home? And we were with other people. And so then all of a sudden, my eyes caught the beauty of these beautiful green. I mean, they were like shiny green trees up in the tree line. And then we had a lot of clouds coming down into the mountains and the purple flowers popping out around the green. And I was thinking about all the colors, and that goes back to what Elder Gideon was talking about, all these colors, of the crayons. And I was just marveling at how beautiful the sky behind the clouds was all blue. So I was just rejoicing about being there all of a sudden, and just this beauty, and just thanking God that I was there after just dreading the whole trip. So that reminds me of surfing a little bit.
Thank you for sharing that, dear sister. I'm particularly moved by hearing you talk about the shift in consciousness happening, noticing the color of the trees and the sky. It's intriguing because, we will talk often of this kind of sky-like nature that is unchanged. It is sky-like, no matter what is moving through the sky. Clouds, big thunderheads, tornado, massive blizzard. All of these possibilities. The sky is unchanged. And, I think your sharing is showing a very profound ability within all of us to gently release that ever-pressing thought of how hot it is, or how dusty, or how terrible, all of these things that we can consume ourselves with, and relax and relax and relax and rest into this nature. And surfing, yes, is it gonna always be that most? I mean, imagine if you talk with any surfer, they have probably caught the wave of a lifetime, once or twice, or most of the time is spent waiting and or getting caught up in something treacherous and everything in between. What about just being in the ocean? It's very curious, this. Your story shares it very well. Thank you.
Thank you for your sharing, Elizabeth. Surf is a way of relating with time and context, of course. And we see in the Jewish Bible how often Jewish civilization has been pushed to the worst case scenarios. again and again. And because of that, we have means of seeing in key characters how they surfed worst case scenarios. I'm thinking of Joseph in Egypt. Would Joseph have become Joseph without Egypt? I'm flash forwarding to the first exile and the Babylonian captivity, where Ezekiel's outside in some kind of tent city, so to speak, with all those who survived the destruction of Jerusalem and were now living in exile in Babylon, while Daniel, a kid, like a high school-aged kid, is living in the palace with the destroyer of Jewish civilization, interpreting dreams and being a guide for Nebuchadnezzar. So I'm just very intrigued by how the story offers clear guidance of how to deeply be with what is happening in the surf without being overwhelmed by it.
Well said, brother. I particularly like the example of, all the examples you're providing. Daniel is very curious. I mean, talk about the removal of these ideas of this lofty spiritual person and all of this, this just natural and spontaneous movement arising where there's this ability, apparently, at a given time to interpret a dream. Same with Joseph. There's this sort of impermanence in the stories that I'm marveling and hearing you share. And obviously this ability to make the best out of what is happening, such that Tao is drawing out that ability to kind of harvest the energy of what is happening. I mean, even when Joseph is in prison, there doesn't really seem to be anything down and out. I mean, he's obviously wanting to get out, but here comes the baker and the cupbearer, and if he was all down and out in his own self, I'm not sure he would have had the experience of interpreting their dreams. So even in the hardest of hard places, making the most out of what is happening and removing the reference points of what it is. Who says what is good or bad? Or, I wonder that person.
Well, I had quite an experience this week. I was involved in a tense court case. Has to do with my work. It's not personal, but it was very, very stressful. And then the next day, we had a storm in my community that knocked out power to most of the town. And by Saturday, I still didn't have power. And I finally was going to break down. I bought a generator, and there's all this stuff I had to do. I had to set it up, and then I had to build this little canopy. I was using an old wood from a skid to build this thing, and it's like I'm the Depression era or something. It's like very there's a lot of stuff, and I'm, using a regular saw because my circular saw wouldn't work, and it was just very intense. And I literally set all this stuff up, and I was reading the instructions on how to start the thing, and my wife popped her head out the window and said, "The power's back on." And I guess, Tal Malachi was talking about the storm, and it is very literal in my case. And I was thinking about how, and I was not, upset that I bought this generator. I mean, it's bound to happen again. But I thought, it's almost like I needed to go along with the script, and, so that things would start to work themselves out. Um, so, but that's just what came to mind. This was a very vivid sermon today.
Dear brother, it is curious how much of life seems to be going along with the script in a certain sense. I think because the ability to go along recognizes what's happening in the very moment and doesn't question what is going to happen, but fully dives into what is happening. And there's something about that I deeply appreciate, because, you could have said, oh, no, power will come back on soon. Not going to go do this whole thing. Buy a generator, do all of this. Okay, well, in another potential, hours and hours and hours go by and this doesn't happen. And there is something about, I've watched this a lot, the example moving through Holy Zadik, where there's almost a power of the moment diving deep into what is happening that frees the thoughts of what if or what's going to happen. It just kind of has this way of settling into what is happening. And what is happening could be different an hour away, but that doesn't matter. And I've always admired, in a sense, that just ability to jump right in to what's happening, because it's almost theurgic in a sense. It carries great power. It removes doubt. It removes what ifs. It removes the incessant thought and thinking of what's going to happen hours from now. It's very curious, that. And you're touching into a deep mystery in the message spoken today that completely embraces what is happening, and kind of goes back to something Sister Elizabeth was sharing, opens to the changelessness in a sense. This kind of sky-like nature that is present all the while. So it's a beautiful mystery woven right into the very fabric of every moment in life. can't dismiss any of it in this way. It's quite beautiful.
The expression came to mind while Tal Malachi was speaking. I think he even said it, as a matter of fact, at one point. It's all good. And I'm thinking it's great to ride the wave when everything is great. It's you're riding the wave and it just seems wonderful. Then you get that change, and there's sort of there's a troubled time, or there's a darkness that comes in. And someone once said, in the middle of difficulty is opportunity. So you can ride the opportunity wave, so to speak. And I think of what he was saying about the righteous ones wanting to live in times of great darkness. Because, and that makes perfect sense, because the greater the darkness, the more a light is going to show up. And it's so there's going to be a greater notice and perhaps a greater willingness for people to change. So it's all good. And whether it be good times or whether we're in the midst of difficulty and struggle, so that's my input.
It's lovely, brother. I mean, isn't it all subject to interpretation? Because kind of back to that really big, beautiful wave that one's been waiting for their whole surfing career. I don't know. I sure have found, in those pristine moments when it actually happens, if we've spent so long waiting for it, we're going to be in the midst of it wondering when it might happen again, right? And so it's like always there's this tendency to always remove ourselves, in a sense, from what is happening. I remember growing up as a kid in the mountains and having those most pristine powder days skiing, right? And it was like you waited for that for sometimes years, and here it happens. And oftentimes flying down that mountain in the billow of big fluffy snow, and the mind going, this is wonderful. When are we going to get another powder day, right? And it's like, well, I'm in the middle of one right now. So something about that, it's all good. Settles the grasping in a lovely way. I think of, and I know I overshare this story, but it's one that deeply adore, the rabbi who always talks about this too is for the good, and this too is for the good. And so when it's time to send these jewels to the Egyptians, or to the Romans, he's chosen because of that attitude he carries all of the time, being able to say, oh, this too's for the good, and this too. And so when at the inn, along the way, the innkeeper steals the jewels and puts in place sand, and it doesn't stop him. He goes, giving them, passing to the emperor, sand, saying, oh, this too is for the good. Never really a question in mind that it ought to be different. Well, you can imagine because of that, kind of back to this little exploration there with Brother Ned on the seizing the moment and diving right in. How does, in the story, Elijah happen to show up to the emperor and share, that sand has great power. Throw it at your enemies in the midst of battle, and there will be victory. So does, and surely, this sand is no ordinary sand. How did that happen? This is what I was speaking of, that sort of theurgic movement with diving right into what's happening and sand, jewels. Who's making the difference? Yes. It's all good.
I hear with Ned and with your response, Tao, an event that happened this week as well. And the point that I hear you drawing out is that if we will be with 100% in complete openness and gratitude, that in itself turns what seems inauspicious in another direction. On Tuesday, I was concerned that I might have been exposed to COVID. The school year is starting. I cannot be away this week. This is not the week to have COVID. I accepted that I might. I did all the precautions, the test. Sure enough, I do not praise God, but the openness to the reality that I might maybe shifted things. And I can't help but wonder if acceptance and presentness theurgically turns events, without which things might go the way feared.
Very well said, brother. You actually just elucidated in a beautiful way that mystery was feeling in comments shared here today from all of you. Well, aren't you sort of guarding gates of all kinds of other wishy-washy things that could potentially arise by diving full force, all of your energy into this one angle and taking all of the precaution? Yes. There's a flux in that. Oh, great potential arises in that. Are things so destined here? I don't think so. We live in a very fluxy reality display. So, and we don't want to assume. We want to be very careful with assumptions. Or, maybe not. I won't take the precaution. Or. Very well said, brother.
I was reflecting on the sermon, the great non-example that was given of the mixed multitude, and like if only we could somehow get rid of them all, then everything would be better, and how much that is such a great analogy to a reflection of parts of self and self. And it just, it's still a developing feeling, but it just reminds me so much of Yeshua keeping company with, the same aspects of, because if a city is like an organism, it's got its, what I love the wording too. There's the publicly good displayable parts, and then there's the ones you're not supposed to like, what the tax collectors and the prostitutes and the lepers, and it's funny because each of those three has kind of a different way they're supposed to be disliked too. It's not like they're all just, there's the big category of, shameful, but then there's different types. And that's such a great way that a self can kind of organize itself as well. But if you see Yeshua, he's kind of moving through the stratums with equal distance and equal access.
Yes, he does. In fact, what you're drawing out, all of it's going to come along. The tax collectors, the lepers, the prostitutes, it's all coming along. It's really curious how we watch Yeshua dance this with all. I think of the Acts of John, where there is this entire revelation of the truth of the cross to John there in the cave. And at one point, if I recall correctly, there is something mentioned about, to the multitude, I am this. Here, the cross. And to the multitude, I suffer, and yet I do not suffer. And so it's almost like in that particular story, you get this expanse of his and the entire movement of the gospel through him. And all of the happenings, the relations with the multitude and all the while here revealing the truth of the resurrection, the ascension. And if you kind of get a feel what trying to paint, you can feel that is happening really through the entire gospel. We get a beautiful little moment of peekaboo there in the Acts of John, but it's kind of happening all the while. Now let's bring this home to us. There is, back to that sky-like nature, the full abiding in the cave, the revelation of cross. Oh, yes. And the multitude observing the crucifixion. And, well, revelations will go as far as the dogs and the sorcerers and the murderers and the thieves all outside the gate. What gate? In fact, I think Revelation talks about those whose robes are washed can enter the gate. The gate is open to them, to the tree of life. But then outside the gate, all of these, are they really that far outside? And what is this gate? Kind of reminds you of the cave, in a sense, in Acts of John. So what a swirl, this. There is probably this expanse within all of us in this journey. Yes, I think so.
bringing up these acts of John. It feels that it's speaking directly to a contemplation that's been hitting me, because it's speaking on such a traumatic event in the lives of this moment in time. And one thing that has been coming to me during this, especially during this sermon, is these deep moments of trauma in life display that carry so deep and run so deep, and they have this far-reaching effect beyond just the moment in hand and you dealing with it. It affects you, and you carry it for your life, and you can you can bring this, and through ignorance, not knowing how to deal with it, you can bring harm to others and things like that. And coming back in this spiritual journey and realizing this, and as you peel back these layers and these layers and these layers, and then finding this spot, there's this piece of liberation there. But it is it's very, it can be very difficult to bring those parts. Those are the hardest parts to bring with you in the spiritual journey. And the spiritual journey can become this clay pot in itself, as hiding from this. And so I'm hearing that in this, and it's helping me understand that more, as exposing these traumas is almost the most important part of the spiritual journey.
I would agree with you, dear brother. A lot of these very deep traumas carry with them sort of defense mechanisms, just like a deep, very old wound in the body has lots of scar tissue, and in fact, what starts to actually cause more of the pain is not the wound itself, but it's the protective devices body has built to protect the wound. And that's what's painful, because that's where so much stress and tension gets held. And so the defense mechanisms can also play out as mentalities or patterns of thought and thinking. And so we want, as these naturally come up for us in the sweet timing of the movement of the Holy Spirit, we want to sit with these in a sense. Watch. This is why we talk so much about mind training and becoming familiar with one's mind and its ways. Because as we sit more and more, and then all of a sudden we come into something like this, there will come a time where we start to notice distinct patterns associated with these traumas. And they play out through other parts of life. Yes, they continue to play out. So, we're learning to peacefully work with these and, in a sense, respond rather than react. Because in the reaction, ooh, yes, we will catch ourselves in places we didn't really want to be and did not intend to go. In the ability to respond, we're learning these vulnerabilities. And it's okay, and there is no judgment. actually. Kind of back to, it is good. We're receiving these. I heard a really beautiful teaching recently that talked about treating these, patterns in consciousness as a wound in body. And so therefore you recognize the vulnerability, right? So you're guarding, you're guarding and holding. It's like if you have a lower back injury, you're going to be careful with what you're picking up and how you're picking it up. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's just a recognition of that potential and open vulnerability. And what if it's not so much about erasing, like you all have been beautifully drawing out, the traumas, because I don't think that can happen. Rather, it's learning to work differently with and relate differently with. Because this entire life has in it every part of it is part of this journey. So not one thing can be left out. Word is learning to relate different. And that has in it the mysteries of Tikkun and Tikkunim of the world. Obviously, because as very deep traumas are related with, in a different way, there's vast healing, mendings transpire more than we would know or need to know even. So feeling that. Well said.
The sermon, I'm enjoying the discussion, and the sermon today and the discussion is just, it's reminding me, that the Lord is with us even in those really traumatic times or the harder times. And, the more we are with the Lord, it's like we don't fear the hard times as much. It's like we fear not being with God during the hard times. And then there's just always those moments of grace that kind of keep us going. So like yesterday, I was hiking and I was having a more mental anguish and emotional anguish than normal. Because I don't want to have that on a hike, right? Obviously I want to be happy, but I was really struggling in my mind and heart. And I kneel, stop, kind of bend down to pray, more letting go, letting into the Lord. And I look up in the clouds and I see the clouds and they're in the shape of an eagle, a great eagle. And then I see the hawks, 2 hawks on the horizon, and they're just going and going. And I'm like, okay, this is good because I'm surrendering and I'm letting go. I'm embracing this moment of being sad, being in surrender. And then on the horizon, there's that glimpse of hope there, or, whatever it means. I think it means, many things. I can draw a lot of good from it. But then it's kind of like that skylight nature of, okay, all these feelings of sadness and whatever I'm feeling, then there's this hope mixed in with it, and that's kind of the beauty of it. And of course, I'm drawing that moment forward from the high. I'm drawing that to share with community, and because that's the hope, right? But there were so many other moments in the day yesterday, but the Lord was with me in all of them, the painful ones, the fun ones, that's kind of like riding the wave, I guess. So, but it's enjoyable more to have painful times when God's with you, that sense of peace. It's not enjoyable to have painful times, but they're not as bad when you have that, and so I don't know, that's kind of what I'm thinking about. Thank you for letting me share.
Thank you for sharing, dear sister. You said something very powerful where you were talking about in difficult situations, it's the fear that God isn't going to be with us or isn't with us. Oh, that is very intriguing, just of how we work, because you've just expressed how a remedy, in a sense, to this is to start off knowing God is always with you. God is always with you. That's one of the three roots. God is with you. And so, this is why in most anything we're doing, we want to start the day in this awareness. We want to enter into a hike in this awareness. We want to launch into our workday or launch into whatever we're taking up in this awareness. God is always with you. And when the going gets tough, not so easy, that awareness already there, surrendering, just simply surrendering what is hard or what is difficult in the moment to the divine presence. It's let go. And how beautiful this expanse of hope being revealed there all the while, but it takes that moment of redirecting energy. Hence, the power of knowing God is always with you. I'm deeply enjoying your insight, dear sister. Beautiful. Thank you. Well, I'm thinking perhaps that is actually a lovely note to pause for a time. Let us together offer up a prayer for the people in the land, holding this heart wish and the sanctuary of grace in our hearts for many, many, many beings this day, that the message of light, of love, the message of the resurrection, Mashiach, the message of the sanctuary of peace and a place of true rest goes forth in expanse, in an endless expanse, that many may receive, rise up in deep remembrance, and abide in the grace in you, Adonai Yeshua Mashiach, Kala Mashiach. May you go carrying this message to all whom you encounter, carrying this sanctuary of peace. My deep love to you, Zachor Shalom.
Remember peace.
Remember
Remember
peace.
peace.
Remember peace.
Remember peace.